issues and concerns of immigrant population in Canada. We are Group 2, and together with my members, Alexis Adorna, myself, Chris Baldonado, Ibrahim Nikem, Meryl Tagabe, Marian Tapia, and Nabjit Gill. So for today's introduction, Canada's foreign population accounts for approximately 1 out of every 5 Canadian residents. Therefore, the well-being of recent immigrants has powerful consequences for our current and future success as a nation. The process of immigration and settlement is inherently stressful. That's why it's very important to tackle about this issue. So what is mental health? According to World Health Organization, a state of well-being in which every individual realizes his, her, or her own potential, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make contribution to her or his community. So mental disorders occur at high rates in all countries of the world. For example, an estimated 450 million people worldwide suffer from mental or behavioral disorders. And in any given year, 1 in every 5 Canadians experience a mental illness or addiction problem. And according to CAMH, by the time Canadians reach 40 years of age, 1 in 2 have or had a mental illness. So what's the definition of immigration? According to Encyclopedia Britannica, immigration is a process through which individuals become permanent residents or citizens of a new country. An immigrant. The term immigrant encompasses a broad range of distinct nationalities, cultures, races, and ethnicities, and it is not a monolithic group. So, brief history. Patterns of immigration to Canada have varied throughout the years, with the mix of places of origin represented. Many immigrants have come from Europe, Asia, the United States, Africa, and the Caribbean. Immigrants are showing a preference for metropolitan areas such as Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal. So what are the reasons for migration? 1 is war and persecution. 2 is successful migration with full family sponsorship, free education and healthcare, to seek greener pasture as many opportunities for employment, and eligibility for Canadian citizenship. So types of Canadian immigrants. Immigrants in Canada arrive in different ways for different reasons. They include newcomers. So a newcomer is a person who arrives to settle for a variety of reasons and with a lot of background experience. And then immigrant. Immigrant, this is a person who has chosen to live in Canada and has been accepted by the Canadian government, and this person can only apply for a permanent residency. A refugee, this is a person who has come to Canada without a choice of his or her own.
Hello everyone, my name is Ibrahim. I'm going to talk about the statistics of migration in Canada. In 2016, Canada's Statistics Review results will provide a new national statistical portrait of migration and cultural diversity in Canada. The population reported that the landed immigrant or permanent resident in Canada are 21.9%. 22.3% of population are close to the record during the 1921 census, which is the highest level since Confederation. And the total number of new immigrants who are permanently settled in Canada from 2011 to 2016 are around 1.something million. The majority of these new immigrants were admitted under economic categories. 26.8% were admitted under family class to join family already in country, and 11.6% were admitted to Canada as a refugee. Ranking. For the first time, Africans such as Nigeria, Algeria, Egypt, Morocco, and Cameroon were the top 5 countries of birth of recent African-born immigrants in 2016. They ranked second ahead of Europe as a source of commitment of recent migrants to Canada, with a share of 13.4% in 2006. Asia, including Middle East, remained top of the recent immigrants. The majority of newcomers were born in Asia, 61.8%. Settlement. Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal are still the place of residence of over half of all immigrants and recent migrants in Canada. Over the past 15 years, more immigrants are now settling in Paris and in Atlantic province is now doubled. Admission categories. With the 2006 census, it's now possible to classify immigrants admitted to Canada since 1980 by various admission categories. They are divided into three main categories. The first one is to enhance and promote economic development. The second one is to reunite family. And the third one is to fulfill the country's international obligation and uphold its humanitarian tradition. Determinants of mental health. Using the determinants of mental health frame developed by Evans and Stott, 1990, adopted by New Board, 2009, which recognized that health is influenced by a wide range of variables, as well as interrelationship between these variables. This demonstrates association between self-rate health. First, social demographic. This possibly has effect on the emotional health and stress level of recent immigrants, and are controlled in our regression analysis. They include age, sex, migrant categories, region of origin, and visible minority status. The second one is socio-economic. This includes family income level, employment status, education level at landing, number of individuals in migrating units, marital status, and official language ability. The third one is social networking effect. These are all organizational networks, include ethics and immigration association. Community association and religious groups are also important sources of support for recent immigrants in the integration process. Finally, the health utilization variables. Healthcare access and utilization has been associated with the self-rate health status. Migration involves three major sets of transitions: change in personal ties and reconstruction of social networks, the move from one social-economic system to another, and the shift from one cultural system to another. The migration trajectory can be divided into three components. The first one is pre-migrant. This period often involves disruption to usual social roles and networks. The second migration is immigrants can experience prolonged uncertainty about their citizenship status, as well as situations that expose them to violence. The third one is post-migration. Resettlement. This involves a period after so many years in which one is finally settled in Canada.
Hello everyone, my name is Meryl Tagabe. My part is I will be discussing the common types of mental disorder among immigrants and the factors of mental disorder among immigrants. First is the depressive disorders. The impact of immigration and acculturation to the host society may impact mental health differently based on gender, ethnic or racial subgroups, religious affiliation, and age of immigration. Second is the substance use disorders. The rates of problematic alcohol use and repeated drug use increase across generation status, with second and later generation reporting the higher than first generations. Third is the psychotic disorders. Higher incidence of schizophrenia among immigrants can be clearly explained, but possibly be contributed by low socioeconomic status and acculturative stress. Last is the suicidal. The understanding differences across immigrant groups and by age arrival on the host country. That is one of the great factors to be understood by the healthcare giver. Next topic is the causes of mental disorders among immigrants. The pre-migration for adults. First is the economic, educational, and occupational status in country of origin. Second is the disruption of social support, roles, and network. Third is the trauma. There's a type of severity, the perceived level of threat, and number of episodes. And the fourth is the political involvement, that commitment to a cause. And for the migration part of the adult, first is the trajectory Second is the exposure to harsh living conditions, like for example, the refugee camps. Third is the exposure to violence. Fourth is the disruption of family and community networks. There is the uncertainty about the outcome of migration. And for the post-immigration for the adult, there's also an uncertainty about immigration or refugee status. Second is the unemployed or underemployment. Third is the loss of social status. Fourth is the loss of family and community social supports. That includes the concern about the family members left behind and possibility for reunification. And then next is the difficulties in language learning, acculturation, and adaptation. Like for example, the change in sex roles. And for the child, the pre-migration part is first is the age and developmental stage at immigration. Second is the disruption of education for the children. And then the separation from extended family and peer networks. And for the migration part, there is separation from caregiver, exposure to violence, exposure to harsh living conditions, example for the refugee camps, and then poor nutrition, uncertainty about the future. And for the post-migration part, there is stress related to families' adaptation, difficulties in new language, and then acculturation, like for example, the ethnic and religious identity, the sex roles, conflict, intergenerational conflict within the family. And then next is the discrimination and social exclusion. It happens usually in school or with the peers. And that's...
Hi, my name is Marian Paz Tapia. I'm going to discuss to you the limitations to the healthcare, required healthcare for the immigrants, and the Canadian support to immigrants. First, according to Stanhope, access to healthcare may be limited if newcomers lack health benefits, resources, language ability, and transportation. According to Picard, the limitations to mental health care are the following. The wait times to see a psychiatrist takes long wait times. Psychologists and social workers are accessible, but services are not covered by OHIP, and clients must pay using their own pocket, and it is very expensive. Another thing is the lack of funding. Usually, the government only offers half of the payment for the mental health services, or they only offer full services for those deemed medical necessary. The lack of treatment beds is also a problem. And we are one of the G8 countries without mental health strategy. Similarly, according to Canadian Mental Health Association, the limitation of mental health services is also lengthy wait times for mental health services, the underfunding, the high cost of mental health services, and patients with complex care, they did not receive full support once they are discharged in the hospital. And only 7.2% of the health budget is allocated for mental health support. Second, the required healthcare for the immigrants. According to Statistics Canada, counseling, medication, and information are required to support the immigrants, because counseling, it helps deal with the mental health problem issue, and the medication is usually only covered in hospital. And information, some of the immigrants are not fully aware of their mental health and the culture in Canada. Okay, another required healthcare for immigrants are suicide prevention, because according to the statistics, suicide is one of the leading cause of death of mental health problems in Canada. Also, cultural assessment is also important, wherein the community health nurses identifies the values, beliefs, and preference of the immigrants so they can adjust here in Canada. Also, workplace mental health and mental health first aid, wherein their job site or workplace setting also provide supports to the immigrant. Positive mental health surveillance is a comprehensive assessment of mental health. Okay, lastly, Canadian support to immigrants. There are many mental health support available for the immigrants, and these are the following. Just like the Canadian Center for Victims of Torture, it is a non-profit organization of doctors, lawyers, social workers, and community groups. They help torture victims to recover and guide back to the society. Another organization is the Assertive Community Treatment, headed by mental health professionals that provides assessment, treatment, support, and counseling. Also, case managers, community support workers are also relevant to the immigrants because they help the client meet their goals, cope up, recover from mental illness. They also support, encourage, counsel, and provide feedbacks. There's also drop-in centers where people can socialize and take part in education and recreation activities. There's also mobile crisis line which is available 24/7 to provide mental health care support. And also there's various self-help groups which is also called peer support programs. Other relevant support to the immigrants are the job retraining and literacy programs, the settlement agencies, the employment services providers, language service providers, city services, faith groups, community health centers, and community legal services.
Hello everyone, my name is Alexis Adorna. Today I'm going to discuss the roles of the nurse in mental health issues. Community health nurses should be able to provide cultural assessment, which is a systematic way to identify the beliefs, values, meanings, and behaviors of people while considering their history, life experiences, and the social and physical environments in which they live. Community health nurses need to conduct a cultural assessment for all clients when they first come in contact with them and also provide the following. First, the cultural support. For the cultural support, services are provided by local Aboriginal organizations that coordinate the services of the elders and our traditional healers. Cultural support seeks to assist former students and their families to safely address their issues related to Indian residential school, as well as the disclosure of the abuse during the settlement agreement process, and are designed to help former students and their families. The second one is emotional support. A resolution health support worker will listen, help, and provide support to former students and their family members through all phases of the settlement agreement process. The third one is professional counseling. Professional counselors are psychologists and social workers that are registered with Indigenous Services Canada for individual or family counseling. Other activities may include health education. These activities include public awareness campaign, public meeting, public speaking, developing content for school on alcohol and drug abuse, school programs, news, media works, and cultural and spiritual events. For the benefits of responding to mental health issues, this includes to the immigrant and to the community. For the immigrant, it improves the health and quality of life of the individual with mental disorders and of the immigrant population as a whole. This includes stigma and discrimination can be reduced. The second one improves the probability that they will be able to adjust the community life, which may in turn reduce the likelihood that they will return to their disorders. To the community, it decreases incidence of reoffending. This includes reduce the number of people who return to their disorders. Second one, help divert people with mental disorders into treatment and rehabilitation. The third one is reduce the high cost of mental care. For our conclusion, immigration is a profound non-normative life transition requiring extensive adaptation and is often accompanied by a variety of stressors, irrespective of variety of services provided. Most of the immigrants are still tormented by the dark cloud of many mental health issues and it's pathetic that less researches have been conducted on the factors that influence in the effective solution. Therefore, through our presentation, we hope that we were able to highlight some of the situation they are in and the various programs they receive. But we accept more studies and researches to be carried out in future for a better establishment of this community.